Hi guys, welcome back to SSA Athletics and welcome back to the workout garden. Now today what we're going to be talking about is arms, and arm drive specifically, and why your arms are important when you do running and sprinting. Now guys, if you could smash subscribe, helps this channel out a lot. Also you can check out the SSA website and also the Facebook pages where you can learn about training and learn more about the athletics club. Arm drive is highly important in athletics, and you may have heard it when I've talked about in the workouts, talking about driving your arms, picking your pocket to eye socket. Now if you want to watch any of those workouts, which we did in the workout garden here, you can do in the link above. We'll show you the playlist. Now in athletics and track and field, we drive our arms because, strangely enough, the faster your arms go, the quicker your legs go. Quite odd for me to say that, and you might think, well, that doesn't sound quite right, but it is, trust me, it is. So when we drive our arms, we have this natural effect. For the faster we drive our arms, the legs will then want to turn over quicker. Thusly, we have a slightly longer stride, slightly more energy in the stride, therefore we sprint faster. Now in running, the running arm technique's different to the sprint technique. So we will get onto the running arm technique after we first talk about the sprint technique. So when we're talking about our arm drive, you want to drive from the shoulder. We're not talking about just moving your arms, because we need to see some kind of drive from the shoulder. Otherwise, it looks like you're just doing karate chops or Swedish massages, and that's not good. We don't want that, because you're not driving the arms back, creating that action that will help you run faster. Now when we're sprinting, we want to drive the arm back as quickly as possible, because all these back muscles here then interact, creating a reaction and forcing our arms forward. So the faster you drive your arms back, the faster they'll go forwards. Demonstrate, let's try this at home. So if I just drive my arms forward, I'm not getting this reaction backwards. So let's drive from the shoulder, our arms back. Do you notice a difference? Can you notice a difference in yourself as well? The faster we drive those arms back, the quicker that arm goes forward. Now we've got that worked out, we're going to show you the technique. So when we do the arm drive, I really should state there are two techniques that we utilize in sprinting. One that is generally wider used, and another one that came into prominence or had it in prominence in the late 2000s, but it's rarely seen these days. So basically, but regardless of the technique, this is what you must do. So we want our arms 90 degrees, we drive it back, we pass the pocket, this here, and we come up into this position, 90-degree angles. 90-degree angles, like here. And what we want to do is we pick the pocket. So if you watch my left arm, I'm picking the pocket and I come up with my thumb in line with my eye socket. So remember this phase, pick the pocket, pocket to eye socket. Or pick the pocket, pocket to socket. Remember that, because that will help you visualize the technique and how to drive your arms. But likewise, we're not doing this, we actually got to drive from the shoulder. So we drive forward. This shoulder, the deltoid muscles here, actually have to move. They actually have to move. Otherwise you're not going to receive the full benefit of that arm drive in your sprint. So what we want to do, arms tucked slightly in. Women are going to be slightly wider because of body differences, but generally we're going to try and be in. We're going to pick the pocket, driving that shoulder forward, keeping the arm in line, no flapping with the hands. Sometimes what you see is people flap their hands, and this is what I do, and this is something I'm weak on, so that's what I'm trying to develop on myself. Because my arms are a little bit too low at the moment, so if I can practice getting them higher, I should be able to get a faster time. Anyway, slight distraction, we're going to drive forwards, 90-degree angles, pick the pocket, pocket to eye socket. Keeping the body in line. You're going to get this slight rotation with the top half here, because that's natural. Your body, you're trying to put your shoulder forward, and that you will get a slight rotation. But what we don't want to see is too much soft here and too much rotation round from the hip. We're going to get a little bit because that's the nature of what we're doing. Just like that. Now, as I mentioned, there's another technique that's not so widely used. Generally, we want to keep bent like so with our arms. And we keep bent because it's easier to drive forward. Now, there was a technique, and it's mainly for the more expert guys, is where they drop their hands down and then they come up like so. Now this is not so widely used, and one of the reasons why it's not so widely used is that what happens is, as we drop our arms down, there's a habit to keep our arms straight, so we end up just driving like this, and you're still not receiving the full benefit of the arm drive. You want to be bent and you want to drive forwards. Now what this technique does, for the sprinters at least, is it utilises less energy to be able to do. It's a lot quicker of an action to do. That's why it was popularised in the late 2000s. It's not so widely used now because of those limitations and weaknesses. But likewise, a recap of that particular technique. You still want to drive the arms. So we drive up. And likewise, if you notice, I'm still picking the pocket and coming up to eye socket. Now the problem with the first sprint technique is that we can often potentially, our arms get narrow and we end up just doing this. And we don't want this when we're sprinting. We want to have that arm drive. We've got to drive from the shoulder back. Like so. And what can sometimes happen is we get T-Rex arms. So we go like this, we're trying to drive and we're not really driving much. So we've got the little T-Rex arms. And we don't want that. We don't want to have the little T-Rex arms like so. We want to we want to drive back in a nice smooth action like so. But likewise, as we drive in the arms, we still want to be tall. You still want to be tall as you drive it, so you can then maximise that leg drive. This is what it's all about. Maximising leg drive, getting more drive with the arm back, increasing that speed. Now, when it comes to the runners, they have a slightly different technique because they need to be more relaxed. They're not necessarily driving as hard as they can, although they will still need to learn the sprint technique, because in any race there's going to come a time where you need to sprint, usually on the last lap. Now, their technique is they're a little bit lower, and they're going to run like this. So we still get that arm drive, but it's just more relaxed. The arms are more relaxed, they're not pent and they're not driving forward as such. But likewise, they come up with roughly 400 meters to go, the arm goes back, and then they're in sprint technique. When we do an arm drive as well, one thing we must not do is to be tense in the neck area. Now, you might think, well, why are you talking about the neck? I thought we were talking about arms, but we're going to talk about neck, and this is because it's all interlinked. There is a habit of when you're driving, or when you're trying to utilize those arms to drive, even in the running, is that you get a bit tense, and tension down the body is not good, because maximizing the full force we can do, because if they're tense, they're gonna be like that, rather than being nice big reactions. So this is what I mean. As you see, I'm not driving the arms as fast as I can because I'm tense in the neck. So you've got to be relaxed in the neck. If we're doing the middle distance style or the long distance style, yep, cool. Even when we're doing the sprint style, coming up, pocket to eye socket, nice and relaxed. Now we're going to talk about hands. One thing we don't want is limp wrists, and this is something I need to work on particularly. Especially with the left hand wrist, because that's the one that's going to be close to the bend if you're doing a 400 meters, or longer than a 400 meters. Limp wrists is not as streamlined as having a stiff wrist. So what we mean, we don't want our hands doing this as it goes behind, like so. So there are ways to prevent this. So the general hand techniques, and there's 3 of them we're going to talk about. The first one's an open hand, like so. Driving back into this action here. The second technique you could utilise is what we call a pencil grip, which is where you hold like hand like this. Now what happens is most people will relax and they end up going in this position anyway. Now the third technique is a closed fist. Now you see some sprinters utilise this, Michael Johnson being probably the most famous, and that's literally a closed fist driving back like so. They each have their limitations. Firstly, the open hand, you get a chance of just having a limp wrist and it flaps. The pencil grip and the other technique, same again. With the pencil grip, you still got a chance of it being limp and twisting in like so. And you might get a little bit of tension along the forearm. Closed fist is a tendency to really tense, and you still get that tension along the forearm, which is what we not want. We want to be tension free, and we want to be nice and easy, but without flapping. Now when it comes to having problems with the Armdrive, there's generally 1 of 3 things that go wrong for most people. A, they haven't got good technique, so then we need to work on the technique. B, they're not strong in the arms, so now we need to develop strength. Potentially they might have to go into the weight room and do more arms. Your arms are generally not necessarily the main muscle groups to working, but they can be complemented, especially with the side muscles down here and the top of the shoulders here. And obviously the back muscles as well, developing that to help with that arm drive. Developing core can also help with that arm drive as well, because you squeeze the core as you're driving your arms forward, allowing those arms to drive back and forward as fast as they can. The third option is that you technically need to work on both. Now for some people the problem might be shoulder mobility, but it's highly unlikely. You don't necessarily need so much shoulder mobility and flexibility, but you can work on that if you believe that would help you get faster and get a better arm drive. So now we're going to tell you some different techniques you can use to improve your hands and also improve your arm drive. Now what we can do is practice it on the spot. Working on, as we mentioned previous, driving, picking the pocket, bringing this thumb in line with eye socket, or if you're going to utilise another technique, you've still got to bring that thumb in line with the eye socket. That's of course if you're doing a sprint technique. If you're not, you just still want to practice driving around about mid-range here if you do the middle distance technique, but you still got to be like so. Now what we can do is isolate those drills. We can do this by isolating by sitting down on the ground. So what we're going to do, slightly wet ground, lovely dew in the morning. So what we do, by sitting on the ground, we technically have isolated our top half and our bottom, so our top half and our legs, so that we can just focus on getting this arm drive right. Now obviously you're not going to be able to extend the arms down into that sprint technique and come up, because the ground is preventing you from doing it. So you can practice the arm drive pocket to eye socket in those 90-degree angles like so, and of course you will get this natural rotation of the top half, but our legs are preventing us from doing it. The ground's preventing us from doing this. So that's another way to work on that technique. Both of those techniques are not the same as actually doing it on a track, actually running and sprinting and utilising those arms in that moment, because we're stationary, we're not moving. Now the third technique is to utilise an elastic band, and what we can do is, imagine there's a wall here. We tie the elastic band around the fence of the wall, and we do different exercises where we drive back against that, and that will give you a resistance to come through. You have to drive our arm back in order to get that resistance to drive your arms forward, and that basically working on that technique. And of course we can do other drills where we have it against the wall, or even weights for instance, building up that strength area there try and working on those areas, doing different arm exercises with weights, lifting weight, but not just doing bicep curls and tricep curls. What we can do is utilize different weight bearing exercises that will develop these side muscles here, develop the shoulders, develop the back, and develop down the arm. So in summary, you want pocket to eye socket, working on moving those shoulders, no karate chops, no Swedish massages. And in terms of the hands, you've got to have hands that are comfortable for you to be able to drive, that prevents flapping and also prevents being tense along the forearm. If you can get those, you should be able to run faster, because the faster your arms drive back, the faster your arms move, the faster your legs move. In terms of middle distance, the middle distance technique is different to the sprint technique. We showed you two different sprint techniques, the standard bent arm one to the arm where we drop the arm down and come up. Middle distance, a little bit more relaxed, but you still need to be able to work on the sprint technique, because there's going to come a time in the race where you will need to sprint. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Adam McCarthy of SSA Athletics. Smash subscribe, really helps the channel out. Smash that bell, check out the websites and the Facebook pages, and I will see you in the next one. Utilise your arms now, or shall I say, wave goodbye utilising an arm drive. Doesn't really work.